the first question that we're going to ask is, does skin color matter in the Bible? And I'm going to leave this open to dialogue for about 3 to 4 minutes because I want us to be able to share ideas. So I leave the floor open to the Mishpachah. Does color matter in the Bible? And what I'm talking about is skin color. Does it matter in the Bible?
No.
Okay, so we got to know.
I believe it does.
So it does matter. Okay.
Your belief matters. Your belief matters, not your color.
Okay.
And I am in agreement with that. Your belief matters, not your color.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it matters in purposes of identification.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay. And I know that was out there.
And that's where I agree.
So identifying people allows you to basically see who they're talking about. So in that aspect, does color matter?
Absolutely.
No?
My answer is still no.
Okay. Okay.
I believe it does, because if it wasn't important, it wouldn't have been mentioned in the scriptures.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. All right. So,
and if you can't identify the people, that was for purpose of identity that they gave that description. And if you can't identify the people, then you get the prophecies incorrect.
But the people came in many different shades.
Yes, they did. And does your color identify you as a believer in Yasharel? Because it's your heart and your faith.
My best example is Noah being albino.
Okay. All right. So we're going to get to that. I love this. So we got about a split. So that allows us perfectly to be able to go ahead and really dig deep. So my first thing, does color matter? Let's go ahead and do our first exercise. I want everybody to go ahead and Google anyone from the Torah, anybody. It could be Moses, Isaac, Jacob, anybody. And I want you to put it in the message, what you think, what you Googled and what you saw in the images. So everybody go ahead and go. 1 minute. Google anybody from the Torah.
I already know the answer to this one.
Google anybody from the Torah, anybody. Or it can be the Tanakh or the Besorah, anybody in the Bible, period. And you tell me what the images show. Go ahead. 1 minute.
I don't need a minute. I've been doing this for a long time.
And just go ahead and write in the message in the chat who you Googled. Or not, yeah, who you Googled. I'm going to check it. Let's see. Sarah and Abraham. So Sharon, what images did you see as far as depictions of Sarah and Abraham?
I'm seeing some typical Sunday school cartoons of European people.
Okay.
Also seeing like some, I think they might call them lithographs, you know, those sketches where they make it look like it's an official cartoon.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Okay. All right. So how about with Moses? What did we see with Moses? If anybody Google Moses.
A European man.
A European man. All right. So Google anybody else. We'll take one more. If anybody could tell me.
I'm driving, but what about Sephora?
That's what you got to Google it. You got to look at the images. Check out Sephora. Or Sephora. So the Caleb, Caleb's son of Jephunneh, what was he, Dan? What'd you see? Okay, European features. How about Jacob? Miss Yvonne, what did you see with Jacob?
So I saw your typical European looking man, and then as you kind of scroll down, they got just a hair darker.
Okay. So we see a lot of the same thing, right? Okay. So if color didn't matter, why are there images of depicted people on the internet? Color's not supposed to matter, right? It's not supposed to. It's about where you're from, not necessarily about your skin color, correct? So if it's about that, then why is there so many images on there that depict a certain narrative? Let's dig deeper. Let's see what the fourth kingdom, because I know Moreh Orlando has been talking about the fourth kingdom, so I wanted to segue into that. Let's see what the fourth kingdom with Rome, and what I mean by Rome is Christianity and Catholicism. Let's see what they think. All right. So these are the famous depictions of Jesus or Yahusha. On the left is the 3rd century AD. It's one of the oldest ones that you could see in Rome. It was in the catacombs, and it's called the Good Shepherd. It doesn't necessarily look like he's Eurocentric or anything. Kind of looks like he has an afro. It looks a little dark, but that is a depiction of him. And then as the later centuries go in the 6th century, you see Christ Pantocrator. And this is a Byzantine Empire picture. And this is how they depicted him, right? And then 15th century, everybody knows that's Salvator Mundi, which is by Leonardo da Vinci. That is the depiction of him. So these are the depictions of him, and they're all colored a certain, right? So let's go to the next thing. Famous depictions of Yah or God. In the 15th century, this is God the Father on the left. Creation de Adamo, which means creation to Adam. That's by Michelangelo. And this is from the Vatican. Like, this is what they draw or they depict him as in the Vatican. And so these are famous Roman Empire depictions. So if color didn't matter, why are they painting these things on church buildings, right? Let's go to the next thing.
Just because it makes you feel uncomfortable doesn't mean it has to change. You know, I mean, Jesus was a white man too, but you know, it's like he was a historical figure. I mean, that's a verifiable fact, as is Santa. I just want the kids watching to know that. Yes. But my point is, how do you just revise it, you know, in the middle of the legacy of the story and change Santa from white to black?
Yeah. I mean, you can't.
So could anybody hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So this is Megyn Kelly. She's a famous anchor at Fox, Republican, and this is what she said. They were arguing over Santa because one of the people wanted to turn Santa, which is a mythical character, right? Wanted to turn them black, and she was upset about that. And then she brought in Jesus, saying that he was a white man too. What relevance does a skin color have? So this is the ideology that we're dealing with I guess you could say, the fourth kingdom. All right. So let's go deeper. Let's see what Jewish people think. And this might shock you guys. And so I put it in quotations for you, those of you that know. This is what they think. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Rabbi Eliezer, but he's a midrash. So a midrash provides commentary of the Bible. And that's what Talmudic Israel is. So that's basically what they believe in, is like the Pharisaical Judaism, like the opinions of men. And so what he does is he retells it, and he retells the biblical narrative. And he's one of the a famous rabbi that's done that. And let's see what he thinks about like what the Hebrews and anybody in the Bible looks like. Let's go to Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar. So it's the writings of the story of the Rabbi Elazar. And on the left, this is his writing. It says, Noah brought his sons and his grandsons, and he blessed them with their several sediments, and he gave them an inheritance, all the earth. And he especially blessed Shem and his sons, making them dark but comely. And he gave them the habitable earth. He blessed Ham and his sons, making them dark like the raven. And he gave them as an inheritance the coast of the sea. He blessed Japheth and his sons, making them entirely white. And he gave them for an inheritance the desert and its fields. These are the inheritance with which endowed them. So that's Noah's 3 sons, right? But wait, run that back. He said they blessed Shem, making them dark but comely. That's interesting. Because the descendants of Shem are the progenitors of the Israelites, correct? So let's go to the next thing. Let's see the largest Christian publisher in the world, Zondervan. I looked up definition of Ham, and I've actually read this actual excerpt from there. It says Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably around 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races. So they're talking about Ham, one of Noah's 3 sons. So they believe that he became the progenitor of the dark races. But they say not the Negroes. That's interesting. We'll save that for later. But the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. So it says Ham is the progenitor of the dark races. And you guys will see where this plays into effect later on. So this is exactly a depiction of what we would say the 3 sons look like. You have Shem, if you look down at the Zizites, you have Ham, and then you have Japheth. So he says comely, dark like the raven, and entirely white. So this is just a depiction of them. All right. So let's go to the next thing. I put Moreh on there just as a sense of humor. How does somebody or a dad create somebody 3 different colors, but he's one person? How does one person create 3 different colors? That's insane to me, right? And I put Moreh on there, like, who's the father, right? We got to look at the father. All right. So let's go. Does anybody know why? Can anybody answer that? How does somebody create 3 different colors?
Was it maybe because Noah was albino, or is
okay
that they may be albino?
Okay, that's a great answer. Anybody else have one?
The mixing of colors.
Mixing of colors. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by mixing of colors? You mean
it's like when you want to get a certain color, you mix 2 other colors. So, and you get a certain color, and you get a lighter color depending upon what you mix, or a darker color depending on what you mix.
Okay. I like that.
No one knows the genealogy of Noah's wife. So that could also have something to do with it. And for Noah's father to have fainted when he was born, clearly his father was not albino. So it was new to his father, albinoism. So he came out with the different genes that cause albinoism. So when you have Noah's heritage, his lineage, and his wife's lineage, and then him coming out albino, that's 3 colors right there.
Okay, that's a good observation. I like those. All right, so let's dig deeper into it. Let's go to where it talks about that. So in the book of Enoch, in chapter 105, 1-6, let's go ahead and look at this. So it says, after a time, my son Methuselah took a woman for his son Lamech. So for you that don't know, Methuselah is his granddad and Lamech is Noah's father. She became pregnant by him and brought forth a child, which flesh was white as snow. Okay, I want you guys to remember the whole phrase "white as snow." It's going into a certain color. It says and red as a rose, and hair is whose head was like white like wool and long, and whose eyes were beautiful. And he opened them and he illuminated the whole house like the sun, and whose house abounded with light. And when he was taken from the hand of the midwife, Lamech, his father, became afraid of him. Why would his father become afraid of him? And flying away, came into his own father. So he ran to his dad and said, I have begotten a son unlike others. So if his skin was white like snow, and he says, I've begotten a son who's not like others, what does that mean the others were? Right? So this is a special thing, right? He is not of men, but resembling the offspring of angels, and is of a different nature, being altogether unlike us. And so for you, for those of you that want to go deeper into it, you could read the book of Enoch 105. But we just got the key information right there. His skin was white as snow, but his hair was like wool. So those are 2 different features. So how can we get 3 different colors? How do we get a dark color from skin that was white as snow, but hair like wool? Well, let's go to the next thing. All right. So yes, albino, we say his hair was white like wool and his flesh was white as snow. Did you all know that the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation is called NOAA? Did you all know that? Why would they call it NOAA? They must know something that we don't know. So let's go to the next thing. So Noah was able to go ahead and create 3 different colors because he has the gene to do that. So that's the way it makes sense. Is he was albino, he can create the Hamite features, the Shemitic features, and the Japhetic features. And albinism, basically, there's information on the left. You have the facial features of your father or your parents, but you just don't have the same pigmentation. So keep in mind that says Noah on the right. All right. Let's go to the next thing. Let's take a look at Noah's lineage. So you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So Ham was dark like the raven. And the sons of Ham, so we're going to go to Genesis 10 and look at his lineage. The sons of Ham, Cush, and Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, and Put in Canaan. Those were his sons. So those are supposedly, unless there's an albino in there, those are dark like the raven races, or dark like the raven, I guess you could say societies or continents or people, groups of people. Let's go to dark but comely. So in the Song of Solomon, it says, I am black but comely. That probably is where Peter the Rabbi Eleazar got that from, because it says, I am dark but comely. So comely is like a beautiful, like, I guess you could say it's like beautiful. So it says that as the tents of Kedar and the curtains of Solomon, look not upon me because I am black, and the sun had looked upon me. All right, let's go to the next thing. It says, and in Revelations 1:15, and his feet were fine unto fine brass as they burn in the furnace, and his voice was the sound of many waters. Who are they talking about in Revelations 1:15 when they said his feet were fine like brass?
Yahusha.
Yahusha, right? And if you look, that's burnt brass right there. Does that kind of look like that depiction of Shem right there? A little bit? A little bit, right?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. Okay. So it said his feet were like that. All right. So let's go to the next thing. So we're all Shemites. We're all Shemites like this. Were they all dark but comely, or were they all kind of that lighter depiction? Were they all like that? Well, let's look. In Job, he says, my skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. In Lamentations, says their vishes is blacker than coal. If you look coal, that looks kind of like Hamites. So they weren't just one skin color; they were dark, dark, dark as well, right? Dark as the raven, and their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withers, become a stick, like a stick. It says our skin is black like an oven, like burnt. So these are different things that they're describing. So they're describing skin colors, right? So does that have any relevance? Let's go deeper into it. Any questions so far? Perfect. All right, let's go on. All right. So Hebrews were mistaken for Egyptians. So a lot of times they couldn't tell the difference between Hamites and Shemites. It says Moses, and the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered the flock. And when he came, they came to Reuel, their father. He said, how is it that ye have come so soon today? And they said, a Mitzri delivered us out of the hands of shepherds. And he also drew water enough for us. So he was mistaken. You have Yosef, his brethren. They knew not know him. They knew not, because they just like, whoa, he went away. For you that don't know the story of him, he went into Mitzrayim, and then his brothers came and didn't recognize him. They mistook him for a Mitzri or an Egyptian. And then Paul, it says, are you not a Mitzri? Are you not an Egyptian? So these people were mistaken. And these are actual paintings of what Egyptians look like. These are actual paintings. So you could see the color, right? So if they're mistaken for that, then they had to have a tint, some sort of tint in them, right? Let's go to the next thing. Let's look at the color ruddy. So the color ruddy is brought up a lot in the Bible, right? We look at King David. It says, in the Philistine or the Palestine looked about and saw David, and he had disdained him, and he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and a fair. So, and a fair meaning like he looked, handsome and ruddy. So if we look to the right, if you look at ruddy animals, that's what ruddy looks like. It's like a red. It's like a dark brownish ruddy. All right. So let's go down to where it says Adam. So the definition of Adam, is ruddy. Interesting. And it also means a human being. So let's go ahead and go deeper into it. It says, and Yahuwah Elohim formed the man out of dust on the ground and breathed through his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living. So if he's from dust, which that color down there kind of looks ruddy, like dust, like a darkish brown red, like clay almost. So if man was made out of dust, his skin is ruddy, right? So let's go to the next thing. Let's look at Yah. What they say about what color Yah was. It says, let us make man in our own image. Okay. It said the Ancient of Days in Daniel 7, the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and his hair was like wool, like pure wool. So they're giving you a texture. They give texture a lot in the Bible. And it makes me have the question, why do they do that? Why? In Revelations 4, 2-3 says, behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. So he's talking about Yah, right? And he that sat was to look upon like jasper and sardine stone. Well, that's what jasper and sardine looks like. If you don't believe me, Google it. Go ahead and look. He's describing Yah as jasper and sardine. Now, we combine those two colors. Do they look something like that? Like, we have to start thinking, if we made him in his image and they say Adam was ruddy and they're describing him like jasper and sardine stone, why are they describing his color? Is it of importance? Let's go to the next thing. So as we look at this map, the blue represents Shem, like his area. The green represents Ham, and the red represents Japheth, which is up top. And if you all look at Ashkenaz right up there, that's where the Jewish, when they say Ashkenazi Jew, that's where they come from, right? But let's look at the intersection between Shem and Ham. We understand that Ham and Shem had their lineage had long relations with each other. Like they ended up going ahead and living in Egypt. They lived in Canaan. They went ahead and had kids with each other, and they mixed all throughout the lineage. So let's go to the next thing. If Hamites and Shemites were mixed through the Bible, what color were the Hebrews? So if you have these two things mixing, no matter what, throughout the whole Bible, what color were the Hebrews? It's a question. What do you all think?
Dark skin.
They had to have some sort of color, right? Because it's like they weren't. One thing we can all agree on: were they a pure race? Was the Semitic bloodline a pure bloodline?
No. I don't think so. No.
No.
No, it was not. It couldn't have been.
Mm-mm.
Even Moshe, his wife was a Cushite, right? They're mixing amongst each other. So it was not pure. So then something doesn't add up. How can we get something that's mixed and wind up with something that looks like it hasn't mixed with anything? Something doesn't add up because these are depictions. These are depictions that are actually hold value on the right, depictions of Yahusha that hold value, and people pray to these different depictions of what people think they look like. And so if skin color mattered or it doesn't matter, why do people go ahead and pray to a certain depiction when we are not to go ahead and bow down to any idols, right? Let's go to the next one. So if you look at Moses, Paul, Joseph, these are all the pictures I pulled off the internet, right? Google has everything, right? So that's a picture of Moses. That's a famous painting of Moses. Paul, that's a famous painting of Paul. And that's a depiction of Joseph. They all look like a pure race, right? But we understand that Egyptians and Hamites and Hebrews, they were a mixed race. So something's off about the artwork pertaining to the biblical figures. Let's go to the next. I go back to it again. Shem and Ham, they were mixing amongst each other. Look at through all in the Bible, they were mixing. And even if you all look at the promised land, where does it say the promised land started? Can anybody answer that for me? Look right at that blue.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So it's supposed to be from the Euphrates to the river of Egypt, the Nile.
Right there where it says Mitzrayim. Yes, exactly. So it pretty much intersects with Egypt, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So if it intersects with Egypt, the promised land, then the Hebrews were basically in what we would call Africa. Their promised land is what we would call Africa, Northern Africa, or Kemet. So it makes you think, how could we have a depiction that is pushed or a narrative that is pushed, but doesn't line up with biblical geography. Let's go to the next thing. So if Yahusha looked like this, and I want you all to think, because it doesn't say his skin color in the Bible. It doesn't say that. It never says he's black, white, anything. It doesn't say that. But why is he painted by the fourth kingdom, what you could say, as this? If he looked like this, let's go to the next thing. Let's take a deep look. And when they departed, so this is talking about when Yahusha's family had to flee. When they departed, behold, the angel of Yahuwah appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Mitzrayim, Egypt. So they fled into Egypt and be there until I bring you word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. So Herod will go through anywhere to go ahead and kill this child, right? When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed to Mitzrayim. You all see what these ancient cave paintings look like? Like they look kind of like that actual depiction of it. You see the bottom left. He's a Hamite, dark like the raven. I see dark but comely. I see different colors in here, but no matter what, the main theme is that they looked dark. So he went to a place where these people looked like this. We all can agree with that, right? Let's go to the next thing. I made this out of kind of like a humor, but if you look at traditional paintings of Jesus or Yahusha, and you put it with traditional paintings of Egypt, this is what you would have gotten. You would have had a baby who stuck out like a sore thumb in the middle of Egyptians. If he looked like this depiction of the fourth kingdom that they gave us, Herod would have found him so quick and killed him. He wouldn't have been able to blend in. He would have stood out, right? So it makes you think. Yah wouldn't send his begotten son to a place where he's going to be identified quickly. He would send a needle amongst needles in a needle stack. Let's go to the next thing. So let's see where all this stuff came from, right? Where this colorism stuff came from. So we look at the curse of Ham. Has anybody ever heard of the curse of Ham?
Yes.
Sure.
We all go ahead.
I just said sure.
Yeah, so we've all pretty much heard the curse of Ham. Like, let's look at Catherine Emmerich, who's a Catholic mystic. So for you that don't know who mystics are, it's like they're close to perfection, basically, and they see things and they get different privileges. And let's look at, so it says the curse of Ham. So a lot of people think that Ham was cursed. This is a misconception. It says in Bereshit or Genesis, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brother. The curse was it a skin color or was it the fact that he has to be a servant to his brothers? It tells us what the curse was, right? How do we get that the curse was black skin? Well, let's see a Catholic, or you can say a fourth kingdom narrative. So Catherine Emmerich says this, and I quote, I saw the curse pronounced by Noah amongst Ham, moving towards the latter like a black cloud obscuring him, and his skin lost its whiteness. He grew darker. I saw a most corrupt race descend from Ham and sink deeper into darkness. I see that the black, idolatrous, stupid nations are descendants of Ham. Thief color is not true. It said their color, that's a misspell. Their color is not due to the rays of the sun, but due to the source whence degraded races spring. Let's unpack this. So the thing I find funny, that let's say she's right. Let's say our skin color is that we're cursed. Let's say that blackness or anything is cursed. Well, guess who mixed with the cursed people? So no matter what that you get, we can't still get that same narrative. So her saying that Ham was dark skinned because of a curse, but yet the Israelites mixed with that skin color, kind of just throws off her whole narrative to mean nothing. So at the end of the day, it means nothing what she's saying. Let's go to the next thing.
1830 to 1978, blacks could
so
not.
Before I do that, we're going to go to So the next person is the president of the LDS, the Latter-day Saints, which is Mormons. So this is what they believed for the longest time. And I feel like it's interesting because it's depicting the mark of Cain. Have you all ever heard of the mark of Cain? Like as far as like it being a curse, like the curse?
Yes.
Yeah, we've heard of that, right? So let's see what the LDS has to say.
1830 to 1978, blacks could not become priests in the Mormon Church, right?
That's correct.
Why?
Because the leaders of the church at that time interpreted that doctrine that way.
Church policy had it that blacks had the mark of Cain. Brigham Young said, Cain slew his brother, and the Lord put a mark upon him, which is the flat nose and black skin.
It's behind us. Look, that's behind us. Don't worry about those little flicks of history.
Skeptics will suggest.
Interesting. So color doesn't matter, but people can't enter into a congregation because of their color. That's interesting. All right. So this is what the curse says. And Yahuwah said to him, therefore, whoever slays Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And Yahuwah set a mark upon Cain, lest finding anyone should kill him. So did it say anything about this right here? Did it say the mark was a skin color? I mean, I must be missing something. Can anybody tell me? Was the mark a skin color?
No.
No.
Was not. It was not a skin color. So we're getting a lot of narratives that these different hues of skin color mean something. So what they're saying skin means something. Because you're this color, not because of where you're from, it means something, right? So let's go to the next thing. So when they say the term white as snow, this is when this actually described, like skin color is actually described. All right. So it says in Exodus 4:6, and Yahuwah said furthermore to him, put now your hand in your bosom. So he's talking about Moses. Put your hand in your bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was white as snow, leopard as snow, right? So it's describing a skin color. It's saying that it wasn't white before, or it wasn't snow before, and now I'm taking it out. It's snow. It's something of importance. All right. Let's go to the next one. In Numbers 12:9-10, the anger of Yahuwah was kindled against them, and he departed, and a cloud departed from off the tabernacle. And behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. Interesting. They're describing a skin color. So we looked at the people describing black, and we looked at the people describing white as snow. She became pregnant with him. So in Enoch 105, we read this before. She became pregnant with him and brought forth a child, the flesh with which was white as snow. 2 Kings, the leprosy before Naaman or Naaman shall cleave to you and to your seed forever. And he went out from his presence, a leper, white as snow. Her Nazarene was purer than snow, or were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk, and they were more ruddy in the body than rubies. So that's another one. They're not saying he's white as snow, they're white, but they're saying that they're ruddy. So they're describing a people. Now, I have a question for y'all. If they're bringing up white as snow multiple times as something like, whoa, this is different, was it common to have white as snow skin amongst Hebrews or Hamites? I asked that question.
No.
It was not common. It was something that was different, right? Let's go to the next thing. This is open for discussion. All right. So I want us to go ahead and be able to have a civilized conversation about this. Was every reference to skin color, was it inspired to be written by Yah? Because if you believe in that the Bible is written by Yah, were the people that wrote those things, were they inspired? And then was every reference put there for a reason? Was every reference to skin color put there for a specific reason? Let's open it up.
good question.
I for one don't want anybody tampering with my Bible. So if it says something about a description about anybody, I want that to be in there. Even if I don't have a reason for it immediately, somebody else somewhere down the line might have a reason to know that information. So I'd say that, yeah, it's divinely inspired to be in there.
But what is the purpose? What's the inspiration?
Details. Everything's in the details. That's why there's so many details that are left out intentionally, that keeps you in a space where we move openly with cognitive dissonance and happily.
White dog. I didn't mean to move that. Continue.
So in this narrative, do we put it in place because we want to cause separatism? Do we want to cause distinction in between the colors? One more superior than the other? Is that why it changed?
Absolutely. Because if you have one that's supposed to be superior and then they view themselves as inferior, then the way they move about in life is completely different. They don't realize that they are the standard and they're living up to a standard which is less than.
So I call that puffing, because it isn't factual. It's what again, a narrative, what we want it to be. And I say we as a people, a race other than Black. To say that I want to be superior, I'm going to do everything that I can. My Bible is going to read differently. It's going to really magnify the positives or everything that I didn't have. I'm going to turn it around and make it positive.
So I guess the question is, how hasn't the Greco-Roman culture puffed up the Bible to do just that?
That's the $1 million question.
That is a great question. And so I have a question to y'all. So skin color, our stance on this, skin color has no relevance as far as who is Yasharel, because of the fact that there were Hamites that were dark skinned, but they were not Yasharel, right? Or they were not Israel. However, they're giving descriptions of the people that were there. They're saying woolly hair, correct? Why is wool hair of importance? Because it's saying it's a certain people. They bring that up with Enoch, Noah. They bring that up with Yahusha. They bring that up with different people. And so we have to say those characteristics. Because if something is taken from somebody from a long time, in order for them to rediscover it, they have to go into the source and be able to identify with that.
But that's where you get resistance, because people have been taught for hundreds of years one way, and who is Jesus, or the skin color, that's all they know. And so when you say, no, here are the facts, it's hard for people to digest that.
This actually, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Dr. Howard, he says all the time, we know what we know, but we don't know what we know. Like, we just regurgitate whatever someone else feeds us, but we can't say where that source comes from. So I think once you start to actually our system has done a great job of making sure that we don't critically think. So once you start to actually critically think and read, then you're able to formulate and ask these questions and even get to a place where we're even having this discussion.
Or at the very least, be able to make the decision of my own, or anyone of their own, whether I want to accept it or not.
100%.
I completely agree.
100%. Exactly. I would agree. Does anybody else chime in? Please chime in. I want to hear everybody's, view. We can all learn from each other.
Well, we have to be very careful with this, because it can be misconstrued as, now, are we going into racism? Are we disliking one color because it's not the true, and I hate to say the word color, but the it is what it is. We have to be careful because people say, well, what about white people? Well, what about white people? It doesn't start there. I just want us to be careful that we don't offend people that don't understand yet.
You got to think about where the word white comes from, though. The word actual
Right.
white is a divisive term put by the Fourth Kingdom to group a certain people based off of their what? Their skin color. Dan is an Israelite. He is. He's one of us. He practices the same things we do. He's our family. But by calling him white, we're saying because of his skin color, he is different from us. You're identified by where you're from, not your skin color. Skin color just basically gives you the details, but they identify you where you're from. So white in itself is a racist term that is divisive, and so is black.
I agree. And so it goes back to when you originally had asked, does it matter? And I'm going to still say no. Color does not matter. It shouldn't matter. It does matter because society has made it relevant, but it should not matter.
I think it depends on what perspective you look at this from. I think transgenerationally, this question is answered differently. So if you ask someone who was a slave, they would say something different versus, as you move up the generational, the boomers, what is it next? Was it, I don't know, Generation X, the millennial, the Generation Z? I think as you move across the generations, that question is answered differently based upon their experience, formulates their perception and their reality.
If I might add, I think that it matters in that the narrative, the lies. If information is twisted for an agenda, then it matters, right? So it's not like intrinsically important, but when you look at the fact that this information was twisted and distorted or hidden, then it matters because you're misrepresenting what's true. Does that make sense?
Shalom, may I add? For me personally, I think of it as a nation of people. And we have to look at it because there are different promises and inheritances for the nations, right? So it does matter somewhat. And if you read Deuteronomy 28 and you really think about it and you think about which group of people throughout history, especially when it comes on to the curses, fit that description, right? And also, there are different promises based on the nation. And also, he tells, for the stranger, he said, in order for you to be saved, you have to join yourself to the Israelites, to the, the righteous. You have to assemble, you have to join yourself. You can't just go out there and have your own assembly. You have to join yourself to the Israelites. So to me, it's more of a matter of the promises and the inheritances that divides, that will separate the nation. But as far as people will say, okay, white people is this and that, I think that they will, that he said that a righteous remnant of them will be saved also. But as to what their inheritance is totally different from the descendants or the righteous descendants of the Israelites. So that's how I look at it. I don't really try to make it into a black and white situation so far, because when you start doing that, then you isolate people, right? But yet still they have to know the truth to say, hey, this is what it says. The Most High said, this is what the promises are for those people, right? They have to know the truth. You cannot just say, we have to take feelings out of it, right? If we believe in what is written in the scriptures. So that's just my part. That's how I look at it. Shalom.
Shalom. The more that I am enlightened, the more that I read, I was inspired to read even more after Moreh Orlando's last teaching at the last gathering. And I spoke with Moreh Melissa because she had posted the ex-Satanist and high-ranking African warlock and the intricacy and the depth at which Hasatan would go to twist and to remove and to disrupt and play people against each other, removing their focus from the primary focus of what they're supposed to be doing. I see more and more, and I realize that when I'm only looking at color, for me, that is a blindness, and I have to open my eyes and look further and look deeper and realize that that fourth kingdom deception is diabolical, and it started many years ago, and they were so open about it. They put it in writing. They put what they were going to do. They put what they wanted to do. They put how they would rule the world and how they would turn each other against each other. And it is a huge agenda and a plan. And he does not want us to be on one accord. He does not want us to think alike. He does not want us to understand and look at it. He wants us to debate all the time. And I just think that when we looked at that video, they had a secret covenant, and it wasn't so much that it was secret, it was just that nobody else knew about it. And it was because of the dynamics of that covenant and what was going on, what happened with it, and then how it could be destroyed. And there's just so much more. And the topic is much deeper than the surface that we like to scrape a lot of times. So I'm still going to say that color identified as we identify each other. And this is things that we've said. Oh, the girl with the dreadlocks, or the girl with the freckles, or the guy with the white hair. With all of these things, it's an identifier of who you're talking about, but it's not an identifier to me of who I am. My heart and my faith determine all of that.
Agreed. I think that, and I started out watching that that video, and it just and I stopped because I kind of ran out of time. But to understand that we have to be cognizant at all times of whose presence we are in, regardless of skin color, because everybody is not for you. Yeah, what's the saying? All skin folks ain't kin folks. So and that could be spiritually, that could be relational, family relationals, whatever the case may be. Because if you understand, if whiteness, pardon me, was not as prevalent as it is today, then who were our enemies? It wasn't them.
Yes.
So there's a spirit that exists in people, and you have to be able to discern that. And when I run into that kind of spirit, and it kind of you'll know it when you encounter it, regardless to who it is.
Hallelujah.
And what was interesting about what you just said, it wasn't about skin color, it was about their spirit. And
Yeah.
that we can discriminate against. When someone has a spirit that is unsettling, but not the color, because a person could be, if you want to say milky white, but has the same belief. How do you discriminate someone that has the same belief system that a true Hebrew would have?
They're not supposed to do
I
that.
want to press. I really appreciate everybody's input, and I just want to say that I do respect everything that everybody has shared. It's very insightful, and I appreciate, the dialogue, and these conversations are important and necessary for healing generationally, for healing in the future of Yasharel coming together as well. To answer your question, initially you asked two questions. Was every reference to skin color, was it inspired to be written by Yah? And was every reference put there for a reason? I think when Yah speaks, he's very intentional. I think when Yah speaks, he's purposeful, and he wants us to pay attention to every detail of what he says. He wants us to dig deeper and research. He wants us to pay attention to the names and the meaning of names, and he wants us to pay attention to the small details. He's in the details. So I don't think that it's an accident that he mentions those things. So I think, to answer your question, I think it's twofold. I agree with a lot that was said. I do appreciate, even what Jackie said in terms of it depends on whose perspective you're asking and whose perspective you're speaking about. Because in one instance, yes, color does matter. And then in another instance, no, color does not. It's almost like oxymoronic in a sense that, yes, it does matter. It does matter for those people who have been disenfranchised and subjected under a fourth kingdom system. It does matter. It does matter when people have hated themselves for generations and they don't know their true identity. It does matter when people have a superiority complex and they're mistreating someone just based on the color of their skin. Yes, it does matter. In those situations, in those instances, it matters when people are taken advantage of and victimized because of it. Yes, it does matter. In the instance, for even when Samuel was anointing King David in the midst of his brothers, and Yah is specifically telling Samuel, don't look on the outward, look at the person's heart. We don't know what he was looking for. Was he, stature, whatever. He was telling Samuel to open his eyes and see King David for the heart, the posture of his heart, the humility in his heart, the repentant heart, the shepherd's heart, all of those things. So yes, in one instance, it does matter. And then in another instance, it doesn't, because like everything that everybody has said is that our heart posture, the things that are in our heart, whether we are of the bloodline of Shem or not, those things are the things in our heart will separate us from Yah. Our bloodline cannot save us. Ultimately, when it boils down to it, our skin color cannot save us. Ultimately, that's why Yah will write his Torah on our heart. That's why the Torah will be in our heart, regardless of what we look like on the outside. So In one instance, yes, it is. It's educational purposes and bringing people out of a position of ignorance and educating people. Yes, it is important. Unlearning and healing generationally those racist wounds that are there, those wounds of self-hate, all of those things that are there. Yeah, it does matter when it comes to that, when it comes to healing Yasharel's heart from the brokenness that it has endured for generations. Yes, it is important to talk about it. But at the same time, we need to have Yah's heart. We need his Torah on our heart. In the days that are coming, there are going to be race wars. There are going to be people pitting us against each other, pitting us against other quote unquote ethnic groups and races. And we have to be mature. We have to be in a position where we are fully discerning the spirit rather than the outside. It's going to be heightened through media. It's going to be a heightened delusion for people to get us to hate each other because of what we look like, because of what this person looks like. It's going to be an increase of it. It's going to be an increase of, and try to build civil war in this country and against one another, and even within Yasharel with colorism. So we need to be vigilant, and our hearts need to be pure, regardless of what it looks like. So it's a twofold question, it's a twofold answer. Yes, everything that Yah did was intentional because he does want us to wake up to the truth of who we are in scripture. But at the same time, he wants us to discern the hearts of ourselves first and then others. And I yield.
100%. So I had one last clip. The reason why it's important for us, because actually I echo what she says. This whole black-white dichotomy is destroying Yasharel, and it's destroying basically everything in America, because it's making us think that light skin, dark skin, black skin, all that stuff. I find it hard to believe that there weren't people that look like my mom and Yasharel. And she's not dark, but she's black, as you would say, or my aunt. There's definitely people that look like them in them. That's why they describe those things as special instances, because there was all types of multitudes of colors, dark, light, black, like whatever you want to say. So they never said that there weren't people that weren't like very light. It's just white as snow. That was something that was just like, whoa, this is different. But I'll go to the next thing. This is why it's important. And I'm sure a lot of you all have seen this, but look at this.
White doll. Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me.
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
That doll.
If you look, it says they have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted against your hidden ones, and they have said, let us cut them off from being a nation. So crafty counsel, they're getting us to divide ourselves and hate ourselves from the inside out. And so it's important for us as Yasharel. Yes, it does matter, but it doesn't divide us, because there's like you all said, there's a lot of dark-skinned people that look like us, but there aren't us. We were fighting with Canaanites for the longest time, and they were darker than us. And it's just like skin color doesn't give you salvation. It definitely doesn't do that. But it is important for us to wake up and see that we're more than just people that were brought here out of nowhere, and realizing your worth. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's important for us to realize who we are, but don't let that basically put you and give you a superiority complex, because it is the matters of the heart. And I yield.
So looking at
Hallelujah.
this this little video, and I've seen a couple of versions of this video, and she's what looks like she's maybe 3 or at the max 4, and she already has been indoctrinated to that. How does that happen like that? And I know you see people on television, and the majority of the people that are on television are Europeans, but some of them are playing wicked people too. And so, how does our people get that kind of indoctrinated like that? That you just inherently know or believe that somebody that's Black is evil? That's just off the chain crazy to me.
I think it's a learned behavior.
And I get that it's learned, but I mean, it starts younger than that. She had to start learning that much younger than that. Where?
Absolutely.
Jeez.
It's in her epigenetics. It's nothing she had to learn. It was passed down from past trauma. It's inherently in her.
That's very true, what Jackie just said, and it goes back to when Moreh Orlando started talking about the Fourth Kingdom deception and the Willie Lynch letters and all of these things that were learned in strategic plans to subjugate the children of Yasharel. And, you know, even what he was talking about last week, you know, with William Pike, and just all of these plans through, you know, just all of these conspiring against Yasharel that has gone on for generations. It's a strategy, and it's a tool in the hand of the enemy to subjugate Yasharel in this fourth kingdom. And this is why it's so important to be prayerful, to be in our rightful place, that we can see things for what they are, and that we're not deceived by these things, and that we're not being used as a tool of division as well in the midst of it. So this was very, very important. And I appreciate Preston for, you know, studying and bringing this presentation, because I feel that it's very relevant even for the days to come, even with the words that were said by her name is slipping my mind right now, but she's the Israeli what's her name, honey? She said that their Israel's biggest threat right now is the young Black people and Black Lives Matter and all these things. That was recently said, you know, within the past couple of weeks, that how are Black people, Black men and young Blacks a threat to Israelis at this point. And this all boils down to this conversation, you know, knowing our true heritage and knowing our lineage. And a lot of people are waking up to the truth of who they are. So yes, it does matter in that sense. And these conversations are necessary. And a couple, like I think 2 Sundays ago, we were on a prayer call, and the women of GAI, the occult prayer, and I'm sorry, hold on. We were on the occult prayer, and basically one of the occultees shared about a dream that she was having with alligators. And the person that was holding the alligators in the dream was spewing all these racial slurs and calling the people in the multitude of Yasharel out of their name. And I just began to do some research on just even her dream and alligators and different things like that. And I think I did post that prayer. but it's an ancient spirit. It's an ancient spirit that we're fighting. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. Like, so it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the end. We are going to know the beginning from the end. These are ancient spirits that we're fighting, that are literally opposing to Yasharel and trying to kill the seed. And how will they do that? Through racism, through subjugation, through tactics like this, through colorism and racism and supremacy and all these different things. So we're not fighting anything new. And that's why we need to be prayerful and on our knees and fasting and praying, so that we have understanding of who we're fighting. And even the ancient god Sobek, Sobek, was one of the alligator or Egyptian gods that, you know, the young Hebrew boys were being thrown into the Nile to honor and worship. So these are things that we have to understand, that it's nothing new. It's just a repeat, and it's a cycle that we have to combat through prayer and fasting. And I yield.
Is that like gator bait?
Yes, literally.
Dang.
History just repeating itself.
Just repeating itself. It's and it's not like it's a surprise to me, but it's just the depth of the wickedness of some people. It's like, how do you even think of this kind of stuff, you know?
So can we all agree that skin colors matters for identification, but not for salvation?
Agreed.
Yes.
We'll agree,
I
right?
agree.
All right. Perfect. So I'll go ahead and well, if anybody else had anything else to add, I'll go ahead and give them time to. Other than that, I'll pray us out. Anybody have anything else?
I just posted in the chat. There's an article from IMHU. I guess there was a study that, I know they did it on worms. They were able to replicate from worms that trauma passed down. Now the lifespan of a worm is significantly shorter than a human, but 14 generations. But there have been studies to see, how long does this trauma pass down. So that's quite a long time.
It's very interesting. Look forward to reading that. I definitely believe that. Anybody have anything else?
I wanted to say that you didn't ask, did race anything about racism? You were asking, does race matter? Does color matter? I think that there's a misconception as far as what the responses were. I wasn't referring to racism. I wasn't referring to in life that the color of your skin in any way matters. I was referring to, according to the Bible, it is very often that they will describe what the person looked like color-wise. They described Zipporah as being dark. They described Noah as being albino. They described Peter as being dark skinned and which tribe he came from. If you go through the Bible, I don't know if the question necessarily should have been, does it matter? But it is referenced, it is identified, and it is told throughout the Bible. And the importance of it, I believe, is narrative. It's based on your reading and understanding who we're talking about. That's the only reason why it matters. In the kingdom of Yah, absolutely not. We all come from one thing. Yahuwah died for who? Jews and Gentiles. So, no, it absolutely does not matter. Society today has made it matter. The separation has made it matter. Orlando's teaching on, oh, great, his name. I've been talking about him all week, and his name just slipped my mind. But the white man that had the agenda to separate and his whole entire way of doing it. These things came to pass, and now here we are. So
it's not that Yasharel is necessarily worried about skin color, because we're more about powers, principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places, whereas the society that we are surrounded by, they are more concerned about the skin color. And it's not even down to necessarily where you're from, because I'm learning more and more that being in America, they're quick to say China, Africa, Japan. You never hear them talk about where they came from. The ones that are making the biggest deal about it, you never hear about the fact that they too did not originate here. So it's not that we as Torah readers are necessarily worried about the skin color or color being of importance. It's more of the fact that it is mentioned throughout the word. And as a mentioning, it's more in a description as to what we're referring to and why it's being talked about. So I just wanted to make sure that that part coming from me was understood.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. No, I would.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I wanted you to finish your statement before I said something.
No, I wasn't saying anything. I was just saying if anybody else had anything. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want the last thing I want to say, and then I promise I won't say anything else. Is thank you for Toda for this very sensitive subject. I'm all for having these very uncomfortable conversations. A lot of people are not. However, if we're going to progress and move forward, then we have to address the very many elephants that are in the room. So I really appreciate it. And appreciate Melissa and Moreh Orlando for giving you the platform in order to have this conversation. And I yield.
Praise God. And that's this whole as I move forward, it's going to be always ask your pastor, because I want us to be able to have open dialogue with other people. And if they can go ahead and say something, we can see where they're coming from. And then that gives us a chance, because it tells us in the Bible or in the word to be wise as serpents. So we got to be artfully crafty on how we approach people, but then also as harmless as doves. So as we go along, we have to approach other pastors and other people of faiths that aren't necessarily ours the same exact way. We got to be crafty. So in order for us to be crafty and artful, we have to know our history and we have to know things inside out. So if somebody was to, case in point, if someone is to come up to you and say, well, since you identify as a Jew, you're anti-Semitic. Well, you could say, well, I actually come from the bloodline of Shem, so that makes me Semitic. So it allows you to have a defense if somebody tries to go ahead and say that you are not who you say you are. So these are important, but no, it does not give you salvation at the same time. So I appreciate, Moreh Orlando and Melissa for giving me the platform to use the message that Yah instilled in me. And thank you all for being able to receive the message and us to be able to have a conversation where we can go ahead and not even debate necessarily, but just iron sharpens iron. We need that in Yasharel. We need that. So I'm thankful for being a part of a mishpachah that opens and embraces mentally sparring with each other, but also allows us to grow mentally. So if anybody has,
I know that Moreh Orlando wants to chime in into the conversation.
Okay.
Jaquise, do you mind putting the links that you put in the chat? Can you please put it in the Life Changers chat too, please?
Yes.
Okay. Did you want to?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Before I jump in, does anybody, Dr. Angela, anybody have anything that you would like to say? Because I'm probably going to take a little bit of time. No? Okay, I'll take that as a no for now. All right, so first and foremost, great job, Preston. I appreciate your time, your diligence, and everything putting into this time and effort to talk about such a thought-provoking topic. It is a topic that's necessary to talk about. It's a topic that is needed 100% because there are a lot of barriers when we're talking about Yasharel as a whole. you know, especially if you're coming from a camp background, because it is known that if you come from a camp background, especially when I've seen it growing up as a little kid in New York, being in Harlem, I would see what we would call the Power Rangers. They would start yelling at individuals and telling them that the white man was under our feet and spittle, all these particular pieces. So again, there are different mindsets growing up in the inner city. The white man was looked at as the devil, right? So we had a lot of different things that we had growing up and things that were taught from Islam, you know, to Hebrew Israelites, different mindsets and different, you know, perspectives. But at the end of the day, we have to give our perspective over to the Most High and what the Most High says. You know, he says that he's called Yasharel to be a light to the nations, right? What does that mean? A light to the nations, right? And then if we are to be a light to the nations, to the ethnos, then what is our job? What is the nations? How do they play a role? What is their part here? Do they have a part? All of these particulars are necessary to really disseminate and to glean, right? Let me ask you guys a question. I'm going to start this disposition off with a question. Does anybody know, and I'm just going to ask this question, and I know all of you guys are going to jump into your Google mode. Who are the Kikuas? Does anybody know who the Kikuas are? Who are the Kikuas people?
How you spell it?
Right? Kikuyus. Who are the Kikuas people and where are they today? My question to you is not only who are the Kikuas people, but are these Kikuas people Hebrew? Are they Eber, those who have crossed over? So I'm going to let you guys sit with that for a second. Kikuas.
Spell it.
Kikuyus. And I'm going to tell you why I'm asking this question. As you guys know, I'm a school administrator at Mountain Point High School. As I'm there, you know, I do talk to people, I communicate with people. And one of the things that someone noticed was that I don't say good morning, and I'm just saying it for point of reference. Instead, I will use one of two phrases depending on who I'm talking to. I'll say good day, or I'll say shalom. Right? So little by little, everybody on my job are starting to say shalom. That's their greeting now, right? That's becoming commonplace now. Shalom. I began to teach them and tell them what it means. And there's one gentleman who, in particular, he is Samoan, from Samoa. And if you guys know people that are from Samoa, they're typically big bone, big gentlemen, right? The men, big bone men, thick, you know, pretty big, things of that nature, just big, thick boned. That's just basically how they're made, right? For the most part. He and I began to get in a dialogue, and then I began to ask him, I was like, you know, we started talking about background and stuff like that. And I asked him, I said, who are your people? And then I said to him, I said, okay, so who were your people before they came there? And I began to ask him all these particular questions. And he was like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know. So I began to say, you know what? Because he would come up to me every day and say, shalom, shalom aleichem, right? So he would come up to me and he was all into it. And my wife, my Isha, knows exactly who I'm speaking about. And he was like, you know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I really want to know who my people are. Like, we don't really think about it like that. We just been told, you know, this is what we are and this is who we are. And I began to say, okay, give me some time. I'll do the research and I'll look into it. So I found out that the Samoans of the islands, they were known as, or their descendants were from and known as the Kikuas people. The Kikuas Uyus. If you look into those individuals, they are Hebrew. They came from Africa and scattered into these islands, the Polynesian islands. And these individuals, when they came, they were warriors. They were warriors. These were warriors from the tribe. Does anybody look it up yet and find out what tribe they came from?
Bantu.
They were of Bantu's language. But what tribe? You're right. They were of Bantu, Hebrew, Israelite identity and languages. But what tribe, what descendant tribe were they from? Does anybody know? Right? They were individuals that were around Mount Kenya, all of those particular pieces that settled in that area. They were descendants of Asher. They are descendants of Asher. In other words, when we are talking about the way that someone looks, when we look at those particular pieces, we are not to go by, or we should not go just by the way someone looks, or the texture of their hair, or the melanin in their skin. All right, so how can I prove this? Who is one of the greatest prophets that you know of? Spit it out. Say a couple of names.
Jeremiah.
Okay.
Isaiah.
Moses. Isaiah, Elijah.
Elisha.
Yep. All right, good. So let's take Elijah for a second, all right? Let's take Elijah. All right, so what do we know about Elijah? Was Elijah full Hebrew Israelite? Was Elijah a full Hebrew Israelite?
I don't know.
Wasn't he a Hittite?
No. He was not a Hittite.
Or a Amalekite?
No, but he was an Ite. He was an Ite. You're on the right page, but he was not one of those. All right. You guys ready?
He was a Tishbite.
He was a what?
Tishbite.
Tishbite? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so I'm going to share something really quickly. Give me a second. I'm going to share on the screen. I believe I can. So can you guys see that on the screen? Before I go on?
Yes.
You guys see that?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to take this passage from 1 Kings 17. It said, now Elijah the Tishbite, right? That's what we just talked about. He is an Ite, a Tishbite, who was of the settlers, right? The Hebrew word Hoshab of Gilead said to Ahab, and Yahuwah Elohim of Israel lives before whom I stand. There shall certainly be neither dew nor rain during these years, except at my word. Elijah the Tishbite would naturally mean an inhabitant or the town of Tishbe, and has no known relationship to Toshab, the Hebrew word for sojourner, right? So the Hebrew word sojourner is not surprisingly almost exclusive in content. So it was said that here that they believe that Elijah was not fully Hebrew, right? There are people who would say that. But my question to us is, does that matter? Okay. Did it switch screens or no? No? Okay.
It's still on.
All right. Here's a Hebrew word that I want us to look at real quick. No, not that one. Wait, I gotta go back. Share screen. All right, I want us to turn in your Bible really quickly to Ephesians chapter 2. Okay. Ephesians chapter 2. Let's read a little bit together there. Ephesians chapter 2 says this. And if you're there, just let me know that you're there. Ephesians chapter 2. it says this, and you hath he quickened who were dead in your trespasses and sins, where in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit, the ruach, that now worketh in the children of disobedience. Okay, so it's talking about past tense, right? The condition of these individuals. Then we're going to go to verse 8. For by grace you are saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is a gift of Yahuwah, not of works, lest any man should boast. For we were created, workmanship created in Christ unto good works, which Yah had made and ordained before us that we would walk in them. Now watch what it says in verse 11. Wherefore remember that you being in time past Gentiles. What is a Gentile? Let's stop right there. Anybody shout it out at me.
Stranger.
Okay.
One that's not native to that land.
Okay.
Isn't Gentile described in Genesis 10, like somewhere between verse 2 and 4? It's in the line of Japheth.
Yes, it says, and these became the isles of the Gentiles. Correct?
Non-covenant.
All right, so what I want us to do is, now that's describing places of where they would dwell, right? But we know that there's been so much mixing and mingling. But my first question here is, what does this word Gentile mean, right? Here's what it means, right? So we're looking at the Greek, so let's go to the Greek. It's the word ethnos, right? So you can see it, it means a race, a tribe, specifically a foreign non-Jewish, right? And we know that that's not the correct term. Usually implicates somebody that's a pagan. In other words, someone that is a non-covenant person. So we can look at this terminology of ethnos, right? People who are non-covenant people. Okay. So we look at a Gentile by definition as a person that is a non-covenant person. Now let's look at it from that perspective. Wherefore, remember, you being in time past, non-covenant people, right? Gentiles in the flesh, whom are called uncircumcision by those who are called circumcision, right? Because circumcision is representing those of the promise. All right, in the flesh made by hands. That at that time you were without Christ, so that these are descriptors of a Gentile, right? You in time past, that's what you were. Non-covenant people, a Gentile. Listen to what he says, right? Without Christ or the Messiah, the Mashiach, right? We can all agree with that. Being aliens from the commonwealth of Yasharel. In other words, you were not considered Israel. You were not considered Yasharel. So a non-covenant person cannot be considered Yasharel. Everybody agree so far? If you agree, holla at me.
Hello.
Agreed.
All right. Now, all right, so a Gentile is a person who is without the Messiah, an alien from the commonwealth of Yasharel, and strangers from the covenants and promises, having no hope. Notice everything that they're telling you, that's considered a Gentile, a non-covenant person. All right, strangers from the covenants and of the promises, having no hope and without Yah in the world. All of these things, a Gentile is considered someone who does not have all of these things. Right? Watch what it says. But now in Christ, right, the Mashiach, Yahushua, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of the Messiah. So when we ask ourselves these particular pieces, we've got to ask ourselves a greater question. In the beginning, in Bereshit, when the Most High created man in his image and his likeness, what did he say? Did he not say, I created that he created man in his image and likeness? All right,
He
let's
did.
go there. You guys can still see, if I work in there, you can see it, right?
Yes.
All right, so let's go to Genesis 1, blue letter Bible. Let's go so we can look at it together, okay? Let's use King James. All right, and we're going to go to the Strongs. Who could tell me off the top of your head what verse is that? Genesis 1 what? Yeah,
26.
There you go.
26.
Yes, indeed. So let's look at this. And Yah said, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Let them have dominion over everything, right? So let's look at this word man. Strong's number H, right? 120. Adam or Adam, right? Everybody see that, right? All right. So here we go. It means man, men, persons, mankind. Whoa, mankind. So wait a second. From the very beginning, he was addressing who? When he created man. He was addressing mankind. He said that I created man that they should inhabit the earth. I created mankind. So we've always got to understand that from the very beginning, humanity comes through the same promise that came out of this. The Genesis promise, right? The very beginning. To have dominion, all these particular pieces, to multiply upon the earth, things of that nature. So we've got to always understand that there was always
Strong's
a
H120. Adam.
Okay.
You're clicking on
Is it?
I think the cursor is on the speaker, yeah.
Okay. So I guess that's how we say it, Adam, right? All right. So we got to understand, number one, that he was addressing man from the very beginning. So we've got to understand that he's made us all to be a light to the nation. So we've been grappling with this question. Number one does it matter? It does matter. Skin color does matter, because if you do not see the people of the book as people of color, people of color will never identify and see themselves in the book. Number one. Number two, it's not just about the skin color. It's not just about the amount of melanin that we have in our skin. As Preston mentioned, you can have people that look like you but not be you. What makes people like you? Like the Most High said himself, Yahushua said, "Who are my brother and my sister but those who do the will of my Father?" Who are my brothers and my sisters but those who do the will of the Father? Ecclesiastes says, what is the purpose of man? That the full duty of man is to obey his commandments, right? To live out Torah. So we've got to always understand that this has always been about covenant. He told, and I don't really want to do this, I don't want to say too much, but if I were to ask you, how many people or how many nations did he tell us not to intermarry with? And in the places where he told them not to marry people, what was the purpose he told them not to intermingle?
So that way you don't bring on their gods and their ways.
Because they're determined
Yes.
the
Most High.
Yes. So everything was about covenant. Everything was about doing the right thing, not being pulled astray. And then the nations that he told them not to intermarry with, I got a question for you. Since we're talking about black and white, right? Did he ever tell them not to marry a Japheth nation? That's a good question to think about. And I'll just leave you with that. We're not going to answer that today. But I did want to say this. I'm going to stop sharing that part real quick. I do want to share something with you because this came up earlier, and I do want to share this with you. So let me go here real quick. And let's start. Let's start. Let's start in Jubilees. Jubilees chapter 4. I'm going to read this one right here. All right, and let's go right here, start at verse 45. All right, so Jubilees 4:45. For this reason it was ordained in the heavenly tablets, with the instruments with which a man killeth his neighbor, with the same shall he be killed. After the manner that he wounded him, in like manner shall they deal with him. And this is the verse. And in the 25th year or Jubilee, Noah took for himself a wife, and her name was Emzara. All right. The daughter of Rachael, the daughter of his father's brother, in the first year of the 5th week. Right. And then it goes on, and in the 3rd year thereof, she bore him Shem. In the 5th year, bore him Ham. And in the 1st year of the 6th week, she bore him Japheth. All right. Now, these words mean something. If we're going to go into it, we'll take forever to do that, but I'm not. I just want you to know that they mean something. Okay, so let's continue to share a little bit something else. So that's one version that came out of Jubilees chapter 4. Okay, now let's look at another one. So we looked at Jubilee. So now we're going to look at, let me see if I can find it, the book of Jasher chapter 5. All right, so we're going to go to Jasher chapter 5. All right, and let's start with verse 9. And Noah and Methuselah spoke all these words of Yahuwah unto the sons of men, right? Then it goes on. Let's go down. Let's go to verse 13. And Noah was a just man. He was perfect in his generation, right? That word is tamim, which means something, right? In his generations, and Yahuwah chose him to raise up a seed from his seed upon the face of the earth. Okay. And Yahuwah said unto Noah, take unto thee a wife, right? Because that was a question. I think somebody said we don't really know who Noah's wife is, right? So take unto thee a wife and beget children. So we know he had a wife. That's normal because that's how conception comes about. For I have seen thy righteousness before me in the generation, and thou shalt rise up a seed and thy children with thee in the midst of the earth. And Noah went and took his wife, and he chose Naamah, the daughter of Enoch, and she was 580 years old. And Noah was 498 years old when he took his wife Naamah for his wife. And Naamah conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Japheth, saying that Yahuwah has enlarged me in the earth. And she conceived again and bore a son, and his name was Shem, saying, Yah has made me a remnant, right? To raise up a seed in the midst of the earth. And Noah was 502 years old when Naamah bore Shem, right? And the boys grew up and went before Yahuwah and Methuselah, and Noah taught him, and so on and so forth. So it goes on. But we see that Noah indeed did have a wife, right? So we see here her name is Naamah. But let's not be thrown off by that, because who knows what Noah's name was before he was born? Was it always Noah? Or was he also known as something else?
His grandfather called him one thing, his father called him another. He has like 3 or 4 names.
Absolutely. So it was not uncommon for individuals to be called by more than one name. Okay? Just like Nimrod is known in Genesis chapter 14 as another by another name. Did you guys ever notice that? Nimrod
Nimrod's a title, right?
Well, we're not going to get into a teaching on Nimrod right now, but we know him as Nimrod, right? The king of Shinar. Will we all agree with that? The Tower of Babel, right? We all would agree with that. But we see him again. We see him again in Genesis chapter 14, and his name is Amphrael, Raphael, king of Shinar. Okay? Then Jasher chapter 11:6 tells us that Noah is Amraphel, king of Shinar. That Nimrod is Amphrael, king of Shinar. So what I'm saying is that there are people who would call them by different names, but they're the same people. So although it may look like it says one name in the one book we look at, Jubilee, and then the difference in Jasher, they're the same person. So what I'm saying is he did have a wife. We do know her name. And in fact, if we look at the other books, we know the mysterious thing, even Cain. Where did Cain get his wife? What's her name? Well, Cain's wife's name was Awan, A-W-A-N. Her name means iniquity. Awan, A-W-A-N. Cain knew his wife and conceived, but her name means iniquity. All right. So I love the topic. Preston, you did a phenomenal job. Great questions that arose today out of this. I appreciate everybody. I'm going to hit stop share right now. So I'm going to turn it back over to Preston, but we can definitely dialogue more and have a more in-depth conversation about this. I love the piece that you brought in also from the older piece of rabbis where they were talking about the three sons and the complexion that they had as well, right? So we understand that at the end of the day, who's following Torah? Who's following the Most High? And as long as we are looking and we're looking at people as enemies because of the color of their complexion, we're not doing our job. Because guess what our job is as people of Yasharel? Our job is to be a light to the nations, bidding whosoever will to come in. We need to be a voice. We need to be a voice that's crying out in the desert. We need to be a voice that's shouting on top of the rooftops, declaring the Besorah, right? Declaring it, letting people know that the Messiah lives and that there's salvation for you if you follow Torah. Follow the ways of the Most High. Return to the ancient paths. And I yield with that. I turn it back over to you.
Toda, thank you for that information. It was always valued. I was hoping you would come on and, give us, your insight on that. We appreciate it. And I'll go ahead and close this out in prayer. Let everybody enjoy the rest of their Shabbat. Abba Yahuwah, thank you so much for letting us know who we are. We understand that identity is everything. We identify as people who follow your word, people who follow your son, people who accept him, that he rose. Thank you, Abba Yah, for allowing us to go ahead and be the light to the nation, Abba Yahuwah. We understand that in order to be light, we have to walk in dark places. In order for us to be effective, we have to go where there's darkness. And we just ask that you go ahead and show us grace. You show us that you divinely inspire our ruachs, and that we don't do anything out of our own will, but out of your will, Abba Yahuwah. Allow us to never, ever operate out of things that are our own agenda, but to always have your grace upon us and follow your Ruach HaKodesh. Thank you for allowing us to be set apart and not be like everybody else. And thank you for allowing us to share your truth. In your son, Yahushua HaMashiach's mighty name. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Thank you,
Hallelujah.